All right, welcome back. This is the Energy Outlook, and like I said before, we went on that short break. I have a guest in the studio who will be telling us everything you need to know about solar technology. His name is Engineer Aniefiok Usoro. Annie, good to have you on the program.
To be here.
Finally, fine. We've been talking about doing some of this sometime, and I'm happy that you're able to make it to the studio today.
Thank you.
So, Annie, I'm going to ask you, can solar cause fire on a building?
Okay, so Wisdom, thank you for having me, and I'll say well done to Energy Outlook for keeping us informed on what is happening in the industry.
Yes.
So before I go into your question, I'll try to give you a background
Okay.
that would help you understand the angle from
Yeah.
which I'll be coming. So
Yes.
I started my training at Power Systems,
Okay.
then went into renewable. I did a lot of installations, and then later I now joined a company. Now, this company, we are into solar panel manufacturing, LPV technology. So
Okay.
the process of manufacturing panels, I had to do extensive training on how to manufacture
So you
high
understand
quality.
the technology behind
Yes.
panels.
So I'll be coming from different angles
Okay.
to attack the question.
Okay.
First off, I'd like to say we look at it from the man, which is the installer,
Okay.
and then we look at the materials that you use, and
Okay.
then we look at the panels to say what would cause the fire, in my own opinion.
Because the importance of this question is people are switching to solar.
Yes.
They spend money, they buy solar panels, they put on their roof, and they buy the batteries and they put the system in the house.
Okay.
Now, when we see a report that allegedly that solar is causing fire on the roof of a house, everybody's disturbed. I am disturbed. That's why I've asked the question to you: is it possible that the solar I have on my roof can actually cause such level of fire?
Yes, it can cause a fire. But then again, the question is how does it happen and what is really responsible?
Okay.
So first off, I'll say it would always start with the installer.
Okay.
In my opinion, 50 to 60% of the reason for a fire on a roof would come from the installer.
Okay.
Because if the installer doesn't do the work properly, then of course it can lead to a short circuit. So what simply happens is, your roof is basically made out of metal materials, whether
Yes.
it's zinc or aluminum or whatever.
Yes.
So now when you have an exposure of a cable and then this cable touches where it's not supposed to touch, so you have a short circuit, and that short circuit leads to heat. Then we remember our fire triangle. Fire triangle simply says three things have to be present for fire to happen.
Okay.
There has to be heat, there has to be a source of fuel, something to keep it burning, and oxygen.
Okay.
Oxygen is readily available. Heat is something that is created when there is a short circuit. And then, of course, your roofing materials is also made from wood. So wood is the source of
So there's a
fuel.
possibility.
So there's a possibility.
There's a possibility.
So now the question now goes to, okay, what are the circumstances that can lead to this?
Yes.
A good one now would now start with the materials you use.
Okay.
For instance, now the common material you find when doing your connection is what we call an MC4, and that's why I have this here.
Okay.
So the MC4 connector is what helps to make three things happen.
Okay.
One, it helps to give you a clean and tight connection.
Okay.
Two, it helps to weatherproof your connection. Remember that this is out there in the open. Heat, water, rain. So you need to weatherproof your connection.
Weatherproof.
Yes. And then thirdly, the MC4 connector makes sure that when you make a connection, you cannot, in error or by mistake, pull off. So like this, you have the male and female.
So this is the MC4?
Yes.
Okay, this one you're holding now?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you plug it, you hear a click.
Okay.
That gives you an idea that it has been properly. So if you try to pull this apart, no matter how hard you try,
It won't work.
it won't work.
And this happened, this is plugged on the roof.
On the roof.
Okay.
So the challenge is this: when you now have an installer that doesn't make use of the MC4 connector because he wants to cut costs, he cuts the cable and then joins it directly without the MC4 connector.
And use maybe
and use
sellotape.
tape.
Okay, tape to
Yes,
tape it
to
round.
tape it. So what do you now do? You are now exposing that connection to weather, and then when weather acts on it, it gets exposed and you have those cables lying on the roof. When the cable lies on the roof and it touches the roof and causes a short circuit, before you know it, you're talking of fire.
So is this something that every solar installer knows? Is it a standard? Is it best practice?
Yes, so your connections, is best practice to use the right, we call them terminators.
Terminators.
But to the question of whether it's something that all installers know, I would say not all installers. Because the challenge we have in installation is that you call an electrician to do your wiring at home, and then you tell him you want to do solar, and he says he can do solar. He's not been trained to do solar installation.
Okay.
And then you now engage him to do solar installation that he has not been trained for.
Okay.
So when you say, do they all know? That person might not know. Secondly, even the cables that you use for your connections on your roof, they are specific cables. You have, that's why I also have this here. You have double insulated cables that give you that ability to go through what the weather will pass it through.
Okay.
So if an electrician that just knows his normal electricity at home uses just any cable, before you know it, those cables would fail. And when these cables fail, they can lead to this short circuit that will lead to the fire.
So what I'm getting from what you're saying now is, before anyone installs solar, you need to have undergone a training to understand how the installation works.
Yes. You need to know the two things. You need to know what to do and why you're doing what you're doing. Because it's one thing to say, okay, I know what to do. Then circumstances change. And then you have to change what you know to do based on the circumstance that has changed. But because you don't know why you're doing what, you just repeat what you know to do. And so in a case where, for instance, now you have several solar panels and you don't know that, okay, the sizing of the cables also matter. You use the same size that you've always known to use. And before you know it, those cables begin to heat up. And when those cables begin to heat up, it can easily lead to a fire. Now, the other thing is this. In my own opinion, the panels themselves, the solar panels themselves, are the least likely to cause a fire.
Okay.
I told you that I work for LPV technologists. LPV technologists, in our training, we're shown how these panels are made. And you know how you do it in school. Then you get a document, you put it into what do you call it, plastic material, and you laminate it. What that lamination now makes it as one firm, rigid document. So now that's what you do with your solar panels. So you place your cells, you place your back sheet, and then you laminate it. So what that does is that it takes out the oxygen component. Remember the fire triangle? Oxygen, source of fuel, and heat. So it takes off the oxygen component. So when there is no oxygen to support fire, it's less likely to happen. It takes a lot for it to burn through both the back sheet and then the glass on top.
So all of this you've explained, is it from your experience? Is this something that everybody knows, but they choose to ignore and go to get it cheaper somewhere? Is it an issue of costs, or is it an issue of some people just want to go and get it cheap either ways? What do you think is the problem?
Well, maybe a little of both. So many people, when you call an installer, a professional installer, and he gives you a quotation, and let's say, for instance, he says this system will cost 7 million naira, and you go saying, but I know somebody that can do it for 5 million or 4 point something million, and then you impress on this installer or go to someone else to force that price. So what happens is, he now thinks of ways to cut short. Oh, he doesn't want to buy a MC4 connector. He doesn't want to buy the PV cable because it's more expensive. He begins to look for ways to cut costs, to fit into that budget that you have given him. So at the end of the day, you discover that this cheap that we are looking for is not really the best. So that's why I say it's a little bit of both. When you say, is it cost or is it's both of them plain. But the truth is that if we begin to consider these things and the after effects, what happens if my roof goes on fire? You begin to realize that cost you're trying to save, you're actually paying more in replacing your roof.
Okay, so let's do it like this now, so that our viewers will understand much better. So if I want to fix solar for my house, and I call an installer or a company to fix for me, what are the things I should look out for to ensure that my safety is guaranteed, or I have confidence that this is safe for my house? What are the things they need to look out for?
Very good question. So the first thing I'll say, especially when you're dealing with a private installer, not a company, because company you will probably believe that they've done their due diligence to get the right people. But if you're dealing with a private installer,
Okay.
you want to ask a lot of questions.
Like what?
So you want to ask, okay, how do you intend to set up the panels on my roof? What will you use? How will you pass the cable? These questions you're asking, you want to get a sense that the person doing the installation understands what he's doing and why he's doing what he's doing.
Okay.
So in explaining to you, you begin to get this sense of this person knows what he's doing. Okay. And that's where the female folks, to be honest, really do well, because they are the ones that always ask the most questions. So when you ask these questions, you begin to, two things happen. You learn yourself, and then you begin to get a sense that this person knows or does not know. So when you ask this question and the person is avoiding the question, doesn't give you direct answer, it's a red flag.
Okay.
So you want to ask questions. That's the first thing. Then secondly, like I said before, you want to be careful about forcing your own bill or your own price on an installer.
Okay.
So if he gives you a quotation, you discuss with him, you know, fine, okay, there are some negotiations that can go on and he can bring it to. But when you keep insisting and pushing, there's a likelihood
that he wants
to
cut costs,
come into,
and then remove the key things that will bring to your safety. Okay.
So those are the two things you want to. Then, of course, you also want to check the roof that you're going to be placing your panels.
What kind of roof?
What kind of roof?
Yes, what kind of
How
roof?
is he going to set it up? Those questions you ask the installer.
So what kind of roof best fit for a solar installation?
Well, for a solar installation, basically you need a roof that is wide, so you don't have too many corners.
Okay.
You need a roof that is wide and plain, and then of course you need a roof that is very healthy. You don't want a roof that when the installer stands on, it begins to cave in, and because of that, the installer is too conscious of his movements on the roof and tries to do things quickly. Because you know the roof is already an uncomfortable place.
Okay.
So when you're not even sure of the safety or the strength of the roof, the installer tries to do things quickly and begins to make some errors that can lead to things like a fire.
Okay. Finally, before I let you go, my question will be, are there standards, maybe like, are you regulated in a way by government that maybe the Standard Organization of Nigeria has provided standards that you must conform with, either as a private installer or a company that you must conform to? Maybe Nigerians don't know, if you want to tell us, or you just, what are those things that you how will I put it, you have to comply with? Are there any regulations that you work with on installing? Just like we know for the discos, we know that there are certain things they must meet when they are connecting the grid to your house, blah blah, all of that. For the solar now, is it the same thing?
Yeah, in a way it is, because solar is still under electricity or power as a whole. So there are some rules. There are basic things that if you learnt your basics in electricity, you should understand. For instance, now, the size of cables you're to use. You know that in your calculation, you know how much power is passing through that cable. Okay. And you know how much, in terms of what size of cable can support that kind of power. Okay. So if, for instance, you go using an undersized cable because you want to cut cost, already you know you're breaking the rule. So if you have the basic electricity and electrical knowledge. And of course, you've gone a step further to now learn more in terms of solar installations, because like I told you, the solar cable is different and all that. Of course, you know the rules. If you go against the rules, it's you now going against the rules. Then, of course, you also have different bodies. I know that even Koren now is giving a form of certification for solar installers.
To certify?
Yes.
So should we begin to look out for Koren certified engineers?
Yes.
Okay.
So you have this we might not be there yet, but something is happening. So you have Koren, like I've mentioned, even RIEN, that's the organization
the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria.
Yes. Okay. So you have all these corporate institutions and even government institutions putting an eye on this, and of course that regulates us.
Finally, there are some landlords who don't allow solar installations on their roof. Okay. When you rent an apartment, your landlord will not allow you to put solar on your roof. And one of their first fear is this issue of fire. Have you experienced that before with certain clients? And how do you think, what will you tell landlords? How can they manage that?
Okay, yes. So it's, of course, with social media and what everybody is seeing on the social media, you won't blame a landlord for wanting to keep the possibility of a fire on his property. So, but the thing is this, for landlords, the advice will always be that you want to make sure that whoever is doing this installation is a professional.
It's a professional.
So you want to make sure that is always the first step. So you cannot say no to maybe your tenant. You cannot stop him from doing the solar installation to help himself or to better his electricity supply. But you can also help yourself by ensuring that, okay, fine, how good is this roof that you want to place these panels? And who are you using to do this installation?
Okay.
The person should give you some form of confidence that the right person is doing the installation. Okay. Of course, you can also decide to visit if you have the time to see for yourself what has been done. But generally speaking, solar has come to stay. We just have to make it work.
I like that. I like that. Thank you so much, Aniefiok. Usoro. Aniefiok is a solar technology engineer. I got that correct. And he has been doing this for quite a while. And I really must thank you for coming on the program, for giving us insight on this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.